All right, let's get the teams up on the stage, and then we'll take a few minutes to do introductions to make sure everyone in the audience knows who we're listening to today. Then we'll have the coin toss and the case. Okay, both teams have all your members on the stage? All right. Very briefly, Alexandra, would you mind starting and just introduce yourself, if you don't mind, and we'll go right across the front. Okay, we're going to need to move the microphones up closer. This is a good practice before we get any further.
I'm Alexandra Stacks. I'm a senior here at Washington and Lee University, and I'm a business journalism major.
Hi, my name is Melissa Karen. I'm a senior here at Washington and Lee as well, and I'm also a business journalism major, but I'm also concentrating in poverty studies.
My name is Alicia Laventure. I'm a senior here at Washington and Lee University. I am a double major in broadcast journalism and Romance languages with a concentration in poverty studies.
My name is Alex Weber. I'm a senior here at Washington and Lee, and I am a major in physics engineering and politics with a concentration in poverty studies.
I'm Andrew Blanzy. I'm a senior from Shenandoah University. No. It is. Okay. Is that better? Okay. My name is Andrew Blanzy. I'm a senior political science major with intentions to go on the law.
My name is Eric Swenson, and I'm a junior political science major.
My name is Jason Guy. I'm a junior political science major.
My name is Kevin McKenzie. I'm a senior political science major.
Okay, and we have 3 judges on the front row. Their name tags are stated out there for you. Do you have a microphone that you can introduce yourselves briefly? Okay.
No, I don't think it's working. Oh, there we go. I'm Margaret Warner. I'm senior correspondent on the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer on PBS, and I live in Washington.
Hello, I'm Martha Analito, and I am a volunteer in a variety of educational interests around the Washington metro area.
And I'm Dick Reese. I'm Vice President of Sales for Vulcan Materials Company, and I live in Richmond.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to follow the same format we've had for the other 4 rounds. And I'm going to start with the coin toss. And does anyone here today have a birthday in February? Well, that didn't work. It's worked every other time. How about January? All right, Kevin, I'm just going to do it. All right? Whoops. Did you see it? All right, here we go. It's tails. So that would mean you get to choose.
We will like to choose first.
Okay.
Like to speak first.
Okay, so presenting team 1 will be Washington and Lee. Presenting team 2 is Shenandoah University. Okay, at this point we need to hand out copies of the case. I don't have any.
We can make it for
For the teams. Are there copies for the teams? We need at least 8 copies if we could come up with that number. All right? Okay. 4. All right. Got 2 extras if we need them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the case for everyone in the audience to hear. The masquerading mortician. Freelance journalist Eli Carrington had heard rumors that the Pentagon was underreporting combat deaths due to friendly fire in the Persian Gulf War. Determined to track down the story, Eli Carrington, from a family of undertakers and generally familiar with the embalming arts, volunteered to work as a mortician at the understaffed Desert Storm Casualty Processing Center at Dover Air Force Base. Through his family's business, Eli acquired a set of fraudulent credentials as a licensed mortician. Posing as a mortician at Dover, Eli was told by several of the enlisted personnel that their buddies in the Gulf were saying that many of the deaths that were due to friendly fire were being officially reported as casualties due to training accidents. In addition, Eli himself observed 2 corpses that were riddled with more than a dozen bullet wounds each, injuries that were unlikely to be sustained during a training accident. When Eli presented his story to the editor of the Bay Guardian, a San Francisco weekly, he was honest about how he had obtained the information, noting that he had exhausted all the traditional means of getting the story using open methods. Eli did not confront the military with the results of his undercover investigation. Although the editor of the Bay Guardian usually declined to run stories that were gathered by deceptive means, he agreed to run Eli's piece. However, the editor insisted Eli call the Pentagon for a comment, which he did. The Pentagon spokesman issued a blanket denial, saying the military never misleads the public or the families about the cause of death of any service personnel, but he refused to comment with any specificity beyond that. His denial was duly noted in the story. Eli defended his decision to pose as a mortician by pointing out that the deception was necessary because the Pentagon was lying to the public, since it was embarrassed by the number of deaths due to friendly fire. Readers' reactions to the story were mixed. Some praised the journalist and the paper for their courage in reporting the truth, while others scolded the editor for his decision, questioning both the journalist's motives and the reliability of his unidentified source. And now the question. Yes? Okay. I'm sorry, my copy may be... Okay, let me reread the last sentence so we make sure everybody has that. Some praised the journalist and the paper for their courage in reporting the truth, while others scolded the editor for his decision, questioning both the journalist's motives and the reliability of his identified sources. That should be plural.
Unidentified or
Unidentified.
This says, my version says unidentified sources. So that's what we're going with. All right. Unidentified sources. Now, the question. Based on your ethical analysis of the case, did the editor act in a responsible manner by publishing the story? I'll repeat that. Based on your ethical analysis of the case, did the editor act in a responsible manner by publishing the story? You now have 7 minutes to prepare. Okay, I'm calling preparation time at 7 minutes. And now Washington and Lee will give the 5-minute presentation.
Faced with this case, it is the position of Washington and Lee University that the acts of the editors to publish this article were indeed ethically responsible. We believe that in this situation, there are 2 competing moral claims. On the one hand, we have the journalistic responsibility to truth and in a democratic society to work as a government or as a watchdog and check on abuse of power by government officials. And on the other hand, questions over the elusive means by which the information was obtained. In this situation, we feel that it is clearly the case that the values of truth and the need for the public to be aware of their government's actions win. As a result of that, we support these actions. My teammate Melissa will first address this claim by demonstrating how, in journalism, deception is always a last resort, but it's made clear here that it was a last resort. My partner Alicia will address the issue that it is such a substantial claim that in the pursuit of accuracy, it was necessary for the journalist to pursue the information by these means. And finally, my teammate Alex will address transparency and how transparency and our willingness to convey to the public how this information was obtained uses one journalistic principle to uphold another, that being truth. And finally, we'll return to me, and I will address the democratic principles at the heart of this issue. Melissa.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex. While the use of deception may seem to run counter to the role of the journalist as a truth teller, in this case, we believe it is justified. Deception is justifiable when there is no other means of gathering information that serves a societal good, as is seen in this case. It is well documented that Carrington felt that there was no other means of achieving this information. For this reason, we believe it is justified. And with that, I will turn it over to Alicia.
Thank you, Melissa. As Melissa said, Carrington exhausted all measures in obtaining this information. In pursuit of truth-telling, this journalist did act responsibly in telling the story. We believe that in crafting this story, he will tell the audience the methods by which he obtained this information. This was a gross error on the part of the government. And in pursuit of transparency, it must be known. We will also report that he did further reporting to confirm that the information that he obtained was true. And with that, I'll pass it over to Alex.
Thank you, Alicia. We recognize that this story is sensitive and controversial. And for the sake of accuracy, we believe that Carrington had to see with his own eyes this evidence. The first information that he received was just rumor. That was not enough for him to publish. But once he, once he found out himself, it was right for them to tell the public. And then I'll turn it back over to Alex.
Thank you, Alex. It cannot be overstated enough that a free press and a press that is willing to serve as a watchdog and a check on the abuse of government power is critical to the success of a democratic society. These democratic ideals are at the heart of a free press and at the heart of our decision today. Yes, the means were questionable, but because of concerns for democracy, for truth, and for the integrity of the journalist and the accuracy of the story, we believe the actions taken on the part of these editors was ethically justified. Thank you.
Shenandoah, now you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. It is the position of Shenandoah that the editor should not have published the story. We understand that this is a very difficult case and whether they should or should not have published the story. However, we base our position on the principle of non-maleficence, which means to do no harm. In this case, the editor acted irresponsibly, knowing that the journalist acted deceptively to get this information. Not only did he use deceptive means, but the journalist also is not a licensed mortician and therefore is not qualified to make an accurate assessment as to what happened to these bodies that he examined. However, we do see the other side, and that some people can make an argument that they should be published, that the article should have been published. And that will be based on the principle of fidelity, which means to have an obligation to something, and that will be to have an obligation to its readership of the paper. And also the principle of beneficence, which means to promote the welfare of something, and that would be to the families of these soldiers that were subject to these deceptive means and telling how their loved ones were killed. And I'll pass it over to Jason.
The opposing viewpoint in this case is that the editor acted in a responsible manner. This is because it's the editor's and the newspaper's responsibility to be loyal to its readers and to get the truth and the information out to the public. The media also needs to be a watchdog and get the correct information out to the public and not allow for the deception by organizations that would falsely represent themselves. They also need to be respectful to the families that they could deceive, and they need to tell the truth because they are losing loved ones that they will never get back, and they need to have full closure on what happened to their loved ones. But it is our position that the principle of non-maleficence outweighs the principle of fidelity and beneficence in this case, and Eric is going to tell you why.
Thank you. As my colleagues have said earlier, our position in this case is that the principle of non-maleficence, which is the principle that you should do no harm to people, in this case outweighs the principle of fidelity, which is the principle you should fulfill your obligations, and the principle of beneficence, which you need to promote the welfare of people. In this case, we believe that the editor violates principle of non-maleficence by printing this story for a number of reasons. The first is that it hurts the military's credibility with evidence that we believe might be potentially false. As my colleagues have mentioned earlier, among other things, this information is third-hand. He got this information from a soldier who heard this information from another soldier in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever this is taking place. Now, this information might be accurate, it might not be accurate. Also, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, we talked about the fact that this person is not a licensed mortician. He found these corpses. What he says might be true, but it might not be true. Should we go completely on conjecture and innuendo in printing this story? Should we hurt the military, one of our most important institutions in this country's credibility, over something that might be completely potentially false? It also might hurt families in this case, because it might shake faith in what they believe happened to their child. How would you feel knowing that what you thought happened to your child may or may not be true? And in any case, this evidence might be not true anyway. It also hurts the paper's credibility for gathering this information with unethical means. the paper will be watched and people worry about what the paper does because they get this information through the unethical means. We also believe there's a problem with the obvious deceptive means that the reporter used in getting this information. What if, for example, he was an ER doctor trying to find a scoop? Will that also be justifiable? He's not licensed. What if someone else's life was at risk? Is it okay just because he's pretending to be someone, a mortician? Would it be okay if he was pretending to be a veterinarian or a dentist? And we'd also like to point out, once again, that this information is we believe, conjecture and secondhand. And now to conclude, I hand it over to Andrew.
It's important to realize in this case that all the reporter's information was based on conjecture, hearsay, and deceit. His own claim that the wounds did not seem to be from friendly fire accident is irrelevant, as he is not a licensed mortician. He deceived the military into becoming a mortician. He just says that it's unlikely to be from a training accident. But how does he know this? He is not an expert in the field of morticians. He is not a mortician. He lied to get to where he was. He used deceit. This action was unethical. The editor, by allowing this story to be published, is ruining the credibility of his paper by allowing stories that are based merely on hearsay, conjecture, and deceit to go through. He's encouraging his other reporters to do the exact same thing. Just because you've exhausted all your other leads does not mean that you are simply allowed to act unethically to try to crack a case. This is simply not right. This is why. Oh, this is our position. Thank you.
Now, each team has 1 minute to prepare a question for the other team. 1 minute starting now. Okay, Shenandoah, you first present your question to Washington and Lee.
Okay, in your case, you made the claim that if you exhaust all traditional means, then it's justifiable to unethically gather information. Do you stand by this claim that you made in your case? Please elaborate.
You have 2 minutes to prepare. All right.
In their case, they made the claim that if you exhaust all traditional means, then it is justifiable to unethically gather information. Do you stand by this position, and please elaborate?
Okay, Washington and Lee, you now have 3 minutes to make your response.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify, this is not an unethical means of gathering under our definition, where it would be considered a means of last resort. We feel that in instances like this, it's serving a greater good and has the potential to affect change. An instance that comes to mind is the Food Lion case out of North Carolina, where a nighttime newscast went in undercover and filmed without letting employees know any knowledge of that. They had heard rumors that Food Lions in North Carolina were dousing rancid chicken in bleach and repackaging as fresh. There were concerns that people would not only become ill, but possibly die. And as a result of their news program, they actually created public outcry, and which got Food Lion in, as you can guess, significant trouble and helped to incite change.
We acknowledge the fact that the journalist is not a licensed mortician, but we believe that the story is an impetus for public debate, which can bring about change. It will cause further investigation to figure out the true manner in which these soldiers were being killed. And out of concern for truth to the public, we believe that these deceptive measures, we reiterate, as a last resort, are acceptable.
Let me further remind the judges and everyone else in the room that we are only presenting the facts of this case as acquired in the story. One of those facts includes the official denial of these allegations. It also includes the nature of our sources and why we determined why we brought up these accusations. We are hoping that through such a story we can incite something along the lines of a public official government investigation, or to affect policy change within the military so that they're forced to be more open about the nature of deaths in war zones or practice zones. As a result of that, I cannot stress enough that we are not obtaining this information unethically, because the concerns of the public good and the concerns over the need to spur change and the concerns over the abuse of power by government officials outweigh the concerns of the dubious methods by which this information was acquired. Thank you.
Now, Washington and Lee, you may present your question to Shenandoah.
Much of Team 2's case depended on the minimization of harm. Our concern is that by not publishing this story, Are we not contributing to greater harm by not allowing to correct the situation or to at least allow for a thorough investigation of the situation?
3 minutes.
Thank you. We believe in this case that deception and misrepresentation, in this case by the journalist, is unethical. We believe that this case should be investigated, but by using deception to do it is very unethical. If there was a question about it to begin with, there would be other ways of going about this case to investigate it.
We're not simply minimizing the harm and the effect on these families and that knowing how their loved ones died. We're just merely showing that you must use ethical approaches in journalism to achieve this. You cannot just spark a story based on hearsay, conjecture, and straight up deceit. He lied. That is unethical. He acted unethically. He obtained this information unethically. That is where we separate ourselves from Washington and Lee.
Now let's be clear about something. The media's job is to be a watchdog. We don't disagree with that at all. We believe that they should investigate these rumors, but they need to investigate these rumors in an ethical manner. And that is where we primarily differentiate with our colleagues on Washington and Lee. They believe, as they said earlier, that deception is ethical. That's something we completely disagree with.
All right, very good. Judges, it's now your turn to prepare questions for each team. Okay, judges, do you have a question for Washington and Lee?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Does it matter in this case that this journalist is not trained to make an assessment of what he's looking at?
You have 1 minute.
You could also, as a reporter, go to these same morticians and ask them their own opinions, these expert opinions on what they think happened to the bodies. These morticians are trained to find the cause of death, and as a reporter, you can go on and try to figure out what these morticians feel. You should dig as deep as you can, not just simply scratch the surface. You should keep digging and keep digging, using ethical means to find the truth of the story, not simply use deceit, unethical means, lying, to uncover a story that you're not even 100% sure is true. He wasn't a trained mortician, he wasn't licensed, he had no expert opinion on how these soldiers died. And that is what is most important in this case, is that he uncovered everything unethically, and this paper, the editor, has a responsibility to his own paper to not publish the story.
And just to add a quick point, you know, you have examples like what happened in Watergate with Deep Throat. You know, that's an area where someone was putting down something that was a scan of a much greater magnitude than this, and someone was still willing to risk their career to give information. There are people that are willing to do the right thing if these sort of things happening. You can go way beyond asking soldiers.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Both teams now have 2 minutes to prepare their summary statement. Okay? Washington and Lee, you now have 1 minute to make your summary statement.
I would like to direct the judges and everyone in this room to one of the critical lines in this case. That being that this journalist exhausted all the traditional means of getting the story using open methods, such as those suggested by Team 2 in their response to the judge's question. As a result, it is logical to conclude that without these deceptive practices, this story would have never seen the light of day. Now I ask you, what is at stake here? The role of the free press and its ability to check the government abuse of power, the trust between the military and its military families, the use of investigative reporting, including undercover practices for the sake of the public good, and finally, the lives of the soldiers involved in these incidents, which engenders a sense of immediacy to this story because it needs to be addressed now, not wait in vain for someone to step forward and risk their career. It needs to be addressed now. Furthermore, we are only raising awareness of concerns and various reports that suggest that this is occurring in the hopes that we will incite a public investigation and official policy change that may lead to address this situation, to save lives, and to preserve the trust between the people and the government, between the people and its press.
Thank you. All right. 1 minute for Shenandoah University.
Watergate and Abu Ghraib were both uncovered through whistleblowers. Deception and misrepresentation are clearly unethical. An editor's responsibility is to report the news and uphold the reputation of his paper. By publishing this story, he is doing neither. The news's validity is in question due to the only information being gathered is through hearsay and by interpretation of a fake mortician. Also, allowing this would hurt the paper's reputation as it is based on deceit and lies. he would encourage all of his other reporters to do the exact same thing to uncover a story. Use any means that necessary is what he is unveiling. You should never do this as the editor of a paper. This is completely irresponsible. Therefore, it is the position of Shenandoah University that the responsible decision would be to not publish this story based on our uniform principle of non-maleficence, and that it would do harm to his paper, to the family, and to the trust in our military. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. We got that.
Before announcing this year's Ethics Bowl winners, I do have 2 comments to make. I think the final thing should be the announcement of these winners and the presentation of the trophies. I have a few words for the student members, and I would like all of the members, all of the students of all of our VFIC schools, both participants and those who came to help, to encourage, just to stand and stay in place just for a moment. So all students stand up. Stay standing, please. Stay on your feet, please. Because I'm speaking to you. When I was a young 18-year-old lad in the Roanoke Valley, I joined a local National Guard unit, became a member of the 29th Infantry Division. My company commander was a veteran of the D-Day invasion. He earned a battlefield commission. And at that point, it didn't really mean much to me. But over the years, I gradually understood what an honor it was to be in the presence and to serve with D-Day veterans. Students, you are in a situation very similar to mine of some 50 years ago. So tell it to your moms and dads, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents, that you, for 2 days, you were in the presence of a genuine icon of the United States of America, Mr. Roger Budden. I'd like for you to lead the applause as we all stand in recognition one more time for this great American, Mr. Roger Budden. And don't ever forget this day. The second comment is that we now bring the 10th Ethics Bowl to a conclusion. Plans are already underway for our next Ethics Bowl, scheduled for February 14th and 15th. How appropriate that as we finish our first decade of the Ethics Bowl events at the home of one of the VFIC founders, Washington and Lee, we now begin our second decade at the site of our very first Ethics Bowl at the home of our other co-founder of the VFIC, the University of Richmond. And now, what we have been waiting for. The winners of the 10th Ethics Bowl, Washington and Lee University.